So we're going to start by getting a sort of an overview of what's going on with the Internet of Things from Don Bowman, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Sandvine. They've done some very authoritative research. People look at it very closely and like to know what's coming up in the Internet of Everything. So why don't we start? Don, give us a little picture of where Sandvine thinks and looks at what's going on in the Internet of Things.
Sure. So Sandvine is a company that's deployed in the broadband side of the network. So our systems are deployed so that we see the consumer's internet traffic as it flows through the way to the internet. And we're deployed in 85 countries. And twice a year we do a report called the Global Internet Phenomena. And it's available for free on our website, sandvine.com. And it goes into some detail about how consumers use the product, how they can use the internet. So we go into details on how much Netflix there is, how many connected devices, how much content is delivered on tablets. So it's really interesting.
Well, you're going to give us a few examples of what you found?
Absolutely. So we're going to give a couple of short examples here. I don't know if the video is coming up. So what we're going to do is just I'll walk you through a little bit of, next please. I'll walk you through a little bit of where this data comes from. So as I mentioned, we're in about 85 countries. So this is a little bit of the international perspective. And also, since this is a very cable-specific show, I thought we'd go in the other direction and talk a little bit about where things are going. Next slide, please. LTE, talk about universal trends. So there's no real surprise that entertainment is what's driving the internet today. So entertainment has driven the internet for many years now. At first, it was just simple web browsing, and then it was songs downloaded with Napster and so on, and then it was peer-to-peer file sharing, and then it was live streaming, Hulu, Netflix, HBO Go, etc. And that's really what's driving it today, is it's an on-demand, in-demand world. And as you can see, it's growing market share. Next slide, please. So the interesting thing about that is it actually exists the same across all access technologies. People want to be entertained. So in every country, on every access technology, more and more of their peak traffic goes towards video. When you have a dominant player like Netflix enter the market and have a really good catalog, it grows very quickly. And when you don't, it grows very slowly, but it ends up in the same spot. So one of the big things that people ask is about is, LTE. Isn't LTE just going to change everything, replace the fixed network? And you think about, I like to think in terms of bits per hertz. A really good LTE network today delivers about 4 bits per hertz. You think about how much spectrum they have, they're going to be really challenged to deliver that. And what we're seeing is that there's huge pent-up demand on LTE. So when networks switch from 3G to LTE, the bandwidth goes up much, much faster than the bandwidth per user goes up much faster than the individual user. So you're seeing something like 2.7 gigabytes. Put it into reference terms, it's about 60 to 70 gigabytes for a typical home user. You're getting into the same ballparks. Next slide, please. So one of the things that's really interesting there is, what happens with the traffic at peak hour. So as an operator, your cost is based on peak capacity. You build a network based on how many bits you need to deliver at prime time. It's not like the old broadcast networks where every user got the same RF signal, and it didn't really matter how many people in the home were watching a TV. It matters. So one of the things we looked at, which we found really interesting, there's been a lot of debate around usage-based billing. The United States market is quite divided on this. About 64% of Americans have some form of usage cap on their networks today. So what we looked at was, what happens on the networks that do and don't have usage-based billing. And what we found is that real-time entertainment stayed almost the same. People valued that experience of being in front of the keyboard, watching the show. But what they discontinued using was the shoulders of the curve, the off-peaks, which was peer-to-peer file sharing, which we found was really interesting. It's about 2.5 times higher on non-usage-based billing networks. Next slide, please. One of the things that's obviously a lot in the press is Netflix. Netflix is the dominant player in video over-the-top delivery today. And one of the things we pegged about a couple years ago is that Netflix had reached its peak penetration in terms of bandwidth. This is not to say that people aren't watching more Netflix. They are. It's not to say that more people aren't joining Netflix. They are. But it's no longer growing faster than all of the other internet content combined. And so for the last sort of 4 halves, we've seen it's roughly constant at about 33-ish% of the peak downstream. That's to say that 1 byte in 3 at peak hour is Netflix in the United States. And we don't see that really changing for the next short while. Next slide, please. One of the really interesting things about that is there's never been any material use of feature-length video on mobile networks. So everybody's got a little cell phone in their pocket. It's totally capable of quite a decent video experience. I'm not talking about inviting all your friends over for a Super Bowl party and pasting your Galaxy Nexus on the wall, but I'm talking about, clip length content and sitcom length content. And we'll see the next slide, that's where a lot of it's delivered to smartphones and tablets. But one of the things is we think that this is the year that it starts to arrive on the mobile device. So it was the fastest growing category from 2% to 4% in the last half, so we think it's going to go up. One of the other really interesting things is the use of the fixed network. The biggest driver of the fixed network growth for the last year and a half has been mobile capable devices inside your home. So this is your home Wi-Fi network and you're sitting on your couch and it's just such a convenient content delivery vehicle. A very significant amount of the Olympics that was streamed was delivered to tablets. So it's driving about 20% of the downstream traffic on the fixed network today to mobile capable devices. You see Comcast with their Wi-Fi offering here. A lot of MSOs have Wi-Fi offerings and it's just going to be driving more and more there. It's 2x increase in last year. Next slide, please. One of the other things, the cable industry is an example of one that has multiple different ways that revenue is driven. There's switched digital video, there's VOD, there's NVOD, there's DOCSIS, there's VoIP. The mobile industry has got the same sort of bouquet of products. The highest margin product is SMS. So I haven't done the numbers in the last couple of years, but SMS, if you priced it on a per byte basis, it's $30,000 a gigabyte of SMS. Think about that in terms of spectrum. Voice is around $10,000 a gigabyte, and data is around $10 a gigabyte. So what's happening is people are moving away very rapidly from SMS, from the older texting technologies, to WhatsApp, Kik, Viber, iMessage, etc. These are rich communication services over the top, and it's destroying the margin of their business. Their data is the architect of their own demise, if you will, and this is just showing something a lot of our customers are intensely interested in, is what's happening to this, this cherry, this high margin service. And what we're seeing is that more and more people are using rich services here. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. So what we're seeing, just to close out this section, is we think that this is the year for mobile that it's going to switch from clip-length video into feature-length video. So today, half of the mobile network is driven by video, real-time entertainment, but it's almost all YouTube. The median length of a YouTube clip, about 3 minutes long. Median length of a Netflix movie or a show is about 25 minutes long. We think that this is the year. The reason we think that is if you look at what's been trending there, Pandora, streaming music services like Spotify, Pandora, etc., are now more than 10% of the network. And in order to get there, there's a lot of hours of use. Like if people are listening to audio as an XM replacement. Secondly, we know from the home network, the fixed network, that people are using their tablets and smartphones to consume considerable amounts of content. So we know they're happy with the battery life and the screen experience. So we think that plus LTE equals an explosion in content delivery on the small and mid-sized screen, and that this is the year that's going to happen. So I think that's sort of all I had to talk about on this. So,
thanks, Don. Every year people say this is the year it's going to happen. What aside from the examples you've just given us, what really do you see as anything from your research that indicates what's going to happen in the next few years to expand on the base we have right now?
Well, nothing ages more rapidly than predictions of the future, if you ever go to like Epcot World or something. The trend lines usually don't lie, and we know that there's a pent-up demand. We've seen this activity occur already on the fixed network. Most users don't think in terms of access technology, they think in terms of content and what they're addressing. So we don't think it's going to be wrong. We were right about the YouTube trend. YouTube went from about 0 to about 50% in about a year and a half or 2 years. The Netflix has doubled in the last bit. It may not be Netflix, it may be a new intermediate. Like it may be too long for people in their commutes to watch an hour-long or half-hour-long show. There may be an emergence of a new 15-minute category that drives it, but for sure it's going there. People want data.
Yeah, there's a lot of data already showing that we're not locked to a 15-minute, 30-minute, 60-minute packages.
Right.
What about upstream capacity? Are you doing anything to look at user-generated content? Old term, but with the growth of video conferencing and others.
So we call that click to cloud. The most content you create in your life today is created from your smartphone. It's your camera, it's your video camera and stills. Every birthday party you're at now, a lot of those automatically upload everything in the cloud to Dropbox, Apple's iCloud, etc. Then it broadcasts down to your other devices. It is one of the most significant drivers of the upstream service today, and it's going up more quickly. On the fixed network, it is 100% peer-to-peer file sharing. It's a rounding error for video conferencing on Skype and all those things. Not to say they don't use a fair bit of bandwidth, but they don't use anywhere near the bandwidth of the file sharing.
We'll take the last couple minutes. Does anybody have a question for Don? Just shout it out, or let's wave your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's it. We're going to ask one last prediction for you. A year from now when we come here to talk about this, do you have any feeling of how your numbers will have changed, or will that level we saw static trend stay in place?
We've been driving at about a 25 to 35% CAGR for several years. Don't see any reason for that to change. Being driven by more people doing more things on more devices. Don't see any reason for that to change. Machine to machine coming online in the mobile networks. Don't see any reason for that to start driving material bandwidths. So it's going to be more of the same, except richer and fancier services.
That's what the Internet of Everything, or at least the Internet of Cable Things is.
Okay.
Don, thanks very much.
Thank you.